We hack the code and flip the tag. Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, let fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet. Hey.
Hello, and welcome to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom. I am your host, Kim Miller-Hershon. I am here with Mike Barefoot. We're going to hear all about his stories and career and also what he's now up to, which we can't wait. Mike, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, Kim. It's great to be here. I started off my career back in 97. I graduated with my MBA and was looking for a career that used my communication skills. I thought sales was the avenue to go in. And two types of sales kept gravitating towards me, one being pharmaceutical sales, and was a finalist for Abbott, and the final two individuals, and a guy that had several years of pharmaceutical sales beat me out. And it was probably meant to be, because went to the staffing industry and worked for a large US staffing firm, and I was a permanent placement specialist and did that for a year and a half and got my feet wet, where half the day you're an account executive and the other half of the day you're a recruiter, and found that to be a little schizophrenic. I wanted to learn one side of the house more than the other. So I said, I'll go to another firm, which I went to a company called Matrix that was out of Atlanta. And they were the largest IT staffing firm in the Southeast, and worked for them for 4.5 years and did well at that. But I put myself in a glass ceiling where I was the number one performer. And sometimes being too good can put you in a silo or a vertical that you can't get out of. So then went to another firm, Hudson Global Resources, which was an international company, and was an account executive with them for 6 years and had the opportunity to be a GM or a general manager. And, when you work for a company that's like, you're within a company infrastructure and you're the GM and you're the producer, they usually want to give you a stipend, a business card or set of business cards in an office, but then they expect you to keep up the sales side as well as be the manager. And I didn't want to be the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. So instead of getting a decent paycheck, I wanted it all, and formed my own IT boutique staffing firm in 2010. Ran that for over 15 years. And like I said, had done everything in the corporate side as well as the private industry side as far as me owning a company, and decided so many months ago I wanted to start giving back from placing at least 1,000 professionals in 80% probably IT related jobs and doing X amount of million in revenue. And I just decided I want to start giving back, and some I don't want to say losses, I'd like to say lessons that I learned, so that people don't land on the sword or land on the hand grenade, and maybe make their path a little more efficient or aerodynamic to get to where they want to be.
Love that. Yeah. And you have a lot of experience. All right. So before we get into all the rest of the conversation,
Sure.
I have a random question for you. We are dying to know, what is one thing that you are really looking forward to next year? And before you answer, I'm
Okay.
just going to say I'm looking for something fun here.
Okay. To me, this is fun. Speaking to you is fun. And I want to speak to other audiences, whether it be a university setting or a college setting, or it could be a company setting, where I'm being a keynote speaker and using my years of experience. Like I said, I've spoken to NC State's MBA class for 3 consecutive years, and give some insights, because what they wanted me for was to position graduates. I'd speak to them in the spring, how to position themselves when they graduate. And usually most MBA candidates, I was the exception. I started my MBA program at 23. My son is now starting his MBA journey, and he's 23. And most of the people that are pursuing their MBA are usually midway in their career and are trying to make that large step to vice president or director.
Right.
And with me having the MBA and me also placing people for 27 years, I melded or ensconced those two formats together and said, hey, how can you use your education, but at the same time leverage where you want to be? Because one of the 3 biggest decisions you ever make are, who is going to be your significant other? What's your career going to be? and the house you buy. That's three of the biggest choices you make. So I've talked about all three of those when I've taught the thousands of
Uh-huh.
candidates I've dealt with.
All right, Mike, what are you going to do for fun next year? Not work related. I
Not work.
understand that that's fun. What are you going to do that's just entertaining?
I am going to travel. I've already got a trip set up for New Year's Eve. I'm going to go down to Florida, some warmer weather. And during some breaks, when the company was open, I had an operations director. He was able to run the ship for me while I was gone for a week and a half. I just was checking today to make sure my passport's still good till 2027. So I'm going to try to get out of the country a few times in the next year.
Okay. I have a significant birthday next year.
Okay.
So I decided that I am throwing myself a party.
Good for you.
And what's very funny, I don't know if you've ever been to a bar or bat mitzvah party, but I decided that even though I am very far away from being 13 years old, that that's the kind of party I want. Like I want balloons and I want a DJ and I
Okay.
want somebody there like doing caricatures and
Okay.
yeah, so that's
Good
what
for
I'm
you.
looking forward to.
Good for you. The thing about a party when you're throwing it for yourself, it's hard to get it wrong because you know exactly what you want.
There you go. Absolutely. That's right. And actually, what's very fun. So, we live in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. And my husband is originally from Boston, and all his family is still back there. So, we go back to Boston at least 2 times a year. And we were just back there for a wedding, which was lovely. And so, I picked a date already. And I told all of his family, unless there's an occasion, we go back there because his mom is still living and to see all of them, but they don't come out here to California to see us. So I gave them a little save the date. So hopefully they'll all come out and help celebrate. So that'd be really
Sounds
fun.
like a fun time.
Yeah.
Have you done a party like this before?
Not for myself. I did it for my kids, like when they were 13. Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, in the back of my mind or the recesses, it sounds like you've had experience doing this.
Oh, I have. I am a good party giver.
Oh,
Yeah. It's funny because I did actually a dinner party recently that was like all themed and I'm not cooking for my own party, but I cooked for the dinner party. So that's my other like superpower is that I cook. And actually, you know what's funny? And I feel like I'm getting way off subject here,
no, no,
but
you're fine. You're fine. This is
I think people were coming at 5:30 and at 3:30 I am in my kitchen making biscuits from scratch.
uh-huh.
Get this out, Mike. For an amuse-bouche, which is like a 2-bite
Right.
little sandwich that they get as a like little appetizer, like when they sit down. I'm a crazy person. But
Sure.
my thing is that if you're gonna go to the effort to make it from scratch, then you want it to be warm and fresh and like the best that it can be. So that means making it like at the last minute.
Absolutely. You're talking to someone from the South. If anybody knows about biscuits, I know about biscuits.
There you go. I believe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, I'm a great party giver, but I've never done anything like this for myself. Like my kids' bar and bat mitzvah parties were like epic,
Okay.
but it's fun to think about getting to just do whatever you, just exactly like you said, just getting to do whatever you want because
You're talking about the caricatures, and I was like, that's a fun party.
it's a fun party.
Yeah. And it has a comic element to it. What I always say in my career, I heard one of your earlier podcasts. I was just listening for recreation's sake and I liked it. And one of the things that you want to do is you want to connect with people. And when you have something that breaks the ice, and nothing breaks the ice like humor, and you do a caricature, it breaks the ice, right? And then it's all the veils, all the guards come down, and you're just able to be yourself.
There you go. Yep. Got to get on the fun bus.
There you go.
All right. So you've had a long career,
Sure.
and I would love to know what's one piece of conventional wisdom that you followed early on, only to realize later on that it really was not right for you.
I would say that's a hybrid answer.
Okay.
And when I say that, part of the advice is true. We've heard this adage and we've heard this verbiage for years. And it says, if you work hard, you'll achieve whatever you want. But what the other part of the axiom or the verbiage that's left out is you also have to network and make connections with the right people that can open the doors for you. We hear so much, if you just work hard, you'll get where you want. I've seen it myself, and I've seen it secondhand with thousands of candidates that I've placed. And then I've also seen it with executives that were clients of mine, and they got to know me well enough, and we go out to lunch, or sometimes we go out to dinner. And my job is part recruiter, part account executive, part father confessor, part priest, part or parole officer, whatever, depending on the situation. And they would feel confident enough to share in me. They would say, hey, Mike, I've been doing the same job for the same company. They keep giving me more. I can't move up. And same thing that I was telling you earlier about where I had an invisible ceiling. And they're working harder, but they're not necessarily getting to where they have to go. I did that at the second company I mentioned earlier. And my boss would ask me, why would I want to leave the position that I was the best at in our office? And I said, because that's what I originally mentioned in our interview, and you're okay with it. And plus, I only make 40% what the account executives make. I didn't know what the pay scale was. When you're interviewing comparatively, I was still new to the industry. And I think sometimes you can work really hard and do a phenomenal job and go above and beyond. But I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen it with people that I deal with both as candidates and as managers and executives. They get to a certain spot, and then there's this invisible holding spot or ceiling. And a lot of times, if you have the right connection, you have to move to another company to get where you want to go. And you don't know that until you get to a certain point in your career, because you keep telling yourself the same axiom that people have been telling you when you started your career. If you just work hard, you'll get your just rewards. And that's not always the case.
Yeah, I love that. I have an executive women's online coaching program that I'm doing right now. And my goal with them is to help them 10x their businesses and work less. Because this is what I keep saying to them is, listen, you can't work 10 times harder than you currently work. And you have enough experience to only be doing what is your highest value. You have the resources to hire people, and so much of what they're doing is because I've always done it.
Right.
It just doesn't even occur to them that they wouldn't do X or Y. Or, Mike, I'm sure you've seen this before. It's that they enjoy doing X and Y, but they're also not so crazy busy.
It's also like Pavlov's dog. When they hear the invisible bell and they think it's time to eat, well, when they hear that invisible bell, they think it's time to get up, it's time to go to work, it's time to go through the same functions they've been doing year in and year out, because that's produced successful results. But there's a certain point where the treadmill only goes so fast. And you talk about 10xing and going up. And when you're in a boutique environment like I was, you get also into that. And we've had the downturn in the economy the last 3 years. We had the rebound effect from COVID, where people were hiring up in 2022. And now they're, because of AI and layoffs, I'm out of the industry right now, but we're averaging 100,000 layoffs a month. We passed the million mark in October. So we're going to go probably at least 1 million, 2 million, 3 by the end of the year, because a lot of layoffs happen right before the end of the year. And I always tell people that work for me and people that I place, it's not about working harder, it's about working efficiently, quality and quantity.
That's right. Exactly. I love that. I think that is really good advice. So, as a successful leader, what's one thing people assume that you've got figured out, but behind the scenes, you're still wrestling with it?
I think that anyone that wants to succeed in any facet of their existence, whether it be personally, whether it be professionally, whether it be if you want to be in better shape, athletically, whatever it may be, there's so many different slices of the pie. I think anxiety sets in. And I also think we have uncertainty. And you can say they're different animals, but there's a lot of elements of both that overlap. And I just think that for me, that's something that stays with me all the time, no matter what I've done, no matter what I've accomplished. But I tend to gravitate towards failure, or the fear of failure is a catalyst more for success than success itself. I don't want to slip through the cracks. I don't want to fall to the bottom. And I always tell people life is never linear. It's kind of like a stock. You go up $2 one day. Don't look at the market today. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that. But I say you go down $1.50 over the next 2 days, but you're still 50 cents up. So it's always a graduated process and it's never linear. It's ups, it's downs, it's peaks, it's valleys. And I would say the uncertainty of what's around the corner, what's on the other side of the door, that's probably the biggest fear.
And I think I get really caught in my own business of trying to figure out what is the right answer.
Yeah.
What's the right thing? What is the right next move? What's the right next investment? And there is a point where you've got to collect as much data points as you can, and then you have to make a decision and you
Mhm.
got to go with it. You can always iterate, you can always change the plan, but analysis paralysis
Yeah.
is a real thing, and it really either slows you down or can prevent you from really moving forward.
I was about to mention the exact term 30 seconds before you said analysis paralysis. We also call it the fight or flight syndrome
Right.
because I've had so many times that I've walked a candidate in, right before we're about to go into the building or we're about to go into the office. And I'll say, do you have any last minute questions? Meet me 15 minutes before your interview. I'll try to get you. My goal is to help pump them up when I would
Right.
walk them in for interviews. And I had a person that worked for a government agency for the state, and I was going to put her in another government agency because she had reached her ceiling. And so we're going in. She hadn't interviewed in 7 years. She'd been with the same job. We're talking, and she's telling me when I say, okay, so this skill set they're looking for, she said, I've only had 3 years of that, and they're looking for 5. And I said, okay, just tell them what you have. And then we went to another point. She said, I'm not very well versed in that. I don't think. I said, I'm looking at you through the screen. And I said, do you want this job? She said, of course, that's why I'm here. And she hadn't interviewed. Interviewing is a job in and of itself, and it's art in and of itself. And I said, you're telling me all the reasons why you can't do this job, but you haven't told me one reason why you could do this job. I said, maximize the positive and minimize the negatives. Even if you can't do a skill, you say, hey, I'm a quick study. I learn quickly. I'm a great team player. I'll pick up whatever the slack is. Give all the reasons why you should be in that seat. Don't tell them why you should be hired. And she got the job. And she wrote me a review later and said, within 10 minutes, I transformed her. Now, I don't think I transformed her. I just got her to look at the glass as half full as opposed to half empty.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I really do think that reframing is so important because we find all kinds of ways to sabotage ourselves, right? And so it was interesting. I was talking to somebody earlier today about delegation skills and how you learn those things. And so often we sabotage ourselves, like when we delegate things to people, and then when it doesn't go well, our conclusion is, see, I knew I shouldn't have done that, right? And so often it really just needs a reframe. The reframe that I use in that case is one of your jobs as a manager. In fact, one of your most important jobs is to move the career forward of the people who work for you.
Exactly.
If you're not going to delegate,
Yeah.
how are they going to grow?
And you just become a plate spinner.
That's right.
And you can't spin plates but for so long before you run out of energy. And then you go from 10 plates to 7 to 3, and you're so tired you can't even keep the one plate spinning.
There you go. And what happens when those plates fall,
You
right?
don't plates, you're out of business.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that a lot. All right. If you could rewrite the rule book on leadership, what's one outdated belief that you'd throw away immediately, and what would you replace it with?
I had a mentor who has been in the staffing industry. I'm not going to say his age. And it's kind of like the TV show Charlie's Angels or the movie Charlie's Angels, where Charlie's on the line and you always talk to him, but you never saw him. We've been friends in the industry for 14 years. We've partnered on lots of placements. He's been in the industry, like I said, that many years. He's forgotten more than I know. And I told him some of the experiences, positive and negative, that I had. And you always go under that old him to trust the people around you and underneath you. And I found out through losing employees or losing someone, and then you have to go back through what they've done, you find holes where people will take advantage of your good graces, where you trusted them. And he gave me a valuable lesson that I have kept in the back of my pocket for the last better part of 2 years. And it used to be just trust. And now I extend it and say trust and verify. So I still trust people, but a great lesson my dad taught me was there's two things you can do with 6 feet of rope. You can either make something of it or you can hang yourself. What I've taken with that is I'll trust you and I'll give you a certain amount of autonomy, but there are going to be periodic checks now in place when I've worked with people or work with people or they've worked for me that I would check behind them. And oftentimes people will take the path of least resistance. And if you don't check, they'll go, this works for me. The boat's still floating. Yeah, but we may have tax legislation that we have to stay within, or bank compliancy that we have to do, or the government may require that we send so many times a year certain, and they'll go, those going to be taken care of. When were you going to take care of it? I found that that's been a great adage, and I've put it in the back in the recesses of my mind, is that you can't just trust, you got to trust and verify.
I think that is very important. And not only would I say that, I would say the trust and verify because it sounds a little like
Micromanager or big brother.
micromanaging. Here's though, it's really not. It's actually good management. Because what I would say is if you don't have milestones and deadlines and checkpoints in place, then you're actually potentially setting that person up to fail.
Yes.
So the reframe of that is yes, like it actually benefits, it benefits you, it benefits the person who's doing the work. Wouldn't they like to know in the
Yes.
beginning before they've done all the work and spent all the time if they need to change directions? There's nothing, I don't know. Me personally, I'm very sensitive to feeling like my time has been wasted.
Yes.
So I would much rather get the feedback from you early on and do it the way that you want it done to begin with than to spend all this time and energy doing it the way I think it ought to be done and then for having you say that isn't right.
Yeah. And then you're remaking the mousetrap.
Exactly. And that's frustrating for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, what I found just through when you go through previous experience, and we all do this, we all become introspective and we look at stuff, and you got to have short-term memory, especially like if in the game of football, if you're a cornerback or safety and a touchdown was just thrown against the guy you're guarding, you got to think, he hasn't scored. I've got to get back out there and play him again. But I think what we have to do is realize whenever you're talking to somebody that either is a colleague or someone that's working for you, if they get defensive when you're asking legitimate questions and it's your entity, your company, your group, your division, whatever it may be that's under, your parameters, you have every right to ask certain questions. And if they get defensive about it, to me, that's a red flag.
I would agree, Mike. I would say one sort of tip that I have for anybody who is listening is sometimes all it takes is for you to say, hey, to make sure we're on the same page, can you show me your work in progress? Hey, just to make sure that you're set up for success, can you show me your work in progress? In other words, it takes away the I'm here and you're down here, but it's, hey, to make sure that this works for everybody,
Yes.
let's do this. So that is just something. And listen, I'm going to say that. And then I'm also going to say sometimes people are going to get defensive. And
Yes.
if they do, then that ultimately is on them, right?
Yeah. Because you know what they always say, the only person's emotion that you can control are your own.
There you
And
go.
if you ask a basic question and say, where are we with this? It's all about semantics, right? I'd say,
Right.
where are we with this? And I always try to treat someone that's underneath me or has been underneath me as like a colleague. At the end of the day, they know who the boss is. I don't have to walk around with a sign or a name tag or whatever and say, I am the grand poobah. I'm not. I don't have to do that. But they know in the hierarchy where their checks and where their income's coming from. So
There you go.
when I try to phrase it and say, I'm going to be nice about this and say, where are we with this? How are we doing with that? And if they give you this quick answer, I've got it covered, or they try to push it off and I've taken care of it, or if I don't get the defined answer, or
That's right.
then I know something is being, because you're sweeping me under the rug. And I'm the one that ultimately is the fall guy. You don't
That's
have to
right.
answer to whoever, and they're not going to excuse me because I say, I talked to the guy that works for me. He said it was taking, they're going to look at me as the ultimate onus of wherever or whatever
Yeah.
the station is. So if someone's not comfortable having that conversation, you may have to re-question, is that person from my organization?
That's right. And those are actually important decisions to make. One of the things that keeps me in business is people who are unwilling to make the hard decisions.
Yes. Well, I'll give you to add on to that. So in my career, so being a business owner for over 15 years, staffing at least 1,000 professionals. Have you ever seen the show Ray Donovan with where he's the fixer? Okay. I've had a lot of managers at Fortune 500 companies that they'd have a falling out with an employee, that a consultant. It happens periodically. You could place 1,000 people and 8-10% of the time, somebody's not going to work out, right? So they would call me, and I've had a friend that called me, and they'd say, Mike, so-and-so didn't do this right. So-and-so hasn't done this right. So-and-so hasn't done, we feel like it's time to let them go. And we don't want them on our site anymore. Can you call them and can you get their laptop, their peripherals, their badge? I always say people don't get fired. They fire themselves. You just put the exclamation point on it. So I'm the one that has been like Ray Donovan, where I'd meet them at a neutral parking lot and say, hey, and they go, and they'd be upset with the manager and the company and all the unfair things that had happened to them. And I go, hey, I'm just the guy in the middle. I'd love to have you still working there, but they don't want you back on site, and I've just got to collect what's theirs. And so I put my position, I'd love to have you there because I make money if you're working for me hourly. I benefit too. So believe me, I don't want to lose out on the opportunity. And then they go, oh, he's on my team. So again, I've been the guy that's had to do that and say, oh, can I get your badge too? Can I get whatever it may be? But when I figured it out and they told me, a lot of times the person doesn't want to face that person directly. And they'll use the Microsoft law that came into effect of co-employment and say, Mike, that's why we've got you here so that you can do the hiring, the firing, and you can do, okay. So you're going to send me and I'm going to meet them in a parking lot. Okay, I've done that. It's not where that's one of the least favorable things I look forward to. But at the end of the day, somebody had to do it. And I had to be the guy that would meet somebody and say, hey, I need your stuff. And they don't want you back on the premises. And I'd love to have you there if it was my call. You've already been there 2 years. And my question a lot of times to the manager, why didn't you let me know earlier in the process that things were going sideways? Because then maybe we could have had a meeting and corrective action could have been taken. But now you're so far down the rabbit hole, you're telling me after 3 or 4 incidents, and now you want them gone. But you didn't give me, everything was fine up until this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. All right. What's one unconventional habit or mindset shift? Actually, usually I ask this question that's helped you grow your business. You can answer that question, or maybe an interesting question is, what sort of mindset shift did you have to make to decide to get out of your business and decide to do keynote speaking?
Great question, because you shifted. I like the term you used, reframing. So you reframed on that one too. This time you did towards me. So the thing I would say is, one thing I've applied that, and I don't know if it's where you're taught from a business school standpoint to be an empirical thinker, where it's kind of like a funnel. You have 5 options, you narrow it down to 3, you narrow that down to the 2 best options, and then you go with 1, and it's empirical thinking. Or my dad his personality was like a drill sergeant. So it was this way or the highway, you do it the way I tell you. I was always raised taking a chance, and he was not a big risk taker. So I'm a little outside the boat in terms of what his conventional thinking was. I think he looked at me and scratched his head a lot of times. But being a salesperson, he couldn't do that. Working commission only, he couldn't do that. Opening your own company and throwing the dice and hoping this is a good year, he couldn't necessarily do that. So closing your company down and deciding I'm going to go in a totally different direction where I've spoken before, but now I'm going to do it, like you mentioned, as a new foray. I think tough times don't last, tough people do. So I figure, we had talked about it beforehand, I'm doing the podcast circuit right now to just hone my skill set, get my voice and my message out there a little bit. But I'm going to keep upping the tiers, just like I did throughout my staffing career, going from one segment to another. And that's how you get better at something. And when you get too comfortable, I think that's time to make a change. So I wanted to enjoy life where I was the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker at times, depending on what the scenario was. Now I want to balance. And that's one of the things I heard on the last podcast, and I agree with, is, and I tell candidates this all the time, I tell people that work for me all the time, moderation is the key to life. You have to have balance. Life is a bunch of slivers of pies. It's the downtime, it's the interpersonal relationships, it's the working hard, it's the vacation time you talked about earlier in reference. And if you're doing well in those other areas, you're going to be more energized towards work. And I just look at it as, for me, I need to go into an uncomfortable area, because when I do go into uncomfortable areas, I tend to find out ways to make it more efficient and work for me. And I was going to write a book. I already have 25 plus chapters written for a book. And I've already talked to some mentors or people that do public speaking. I go, you don't make much money off a book. And they said, that's a great supplement to what you do. But they said, you got to go the public speaking route and then bring the book as a supplement. I went, oh, okay. But that's asking the questions and getting out of my comfort zone.
Right.
So again, it's all about when you get too comfortable and you've been in an industry for 25 plus years and utilizing a lot of the skill sets I've used, what'll take me in another direction that utilizes those skill sets, but energizes or re-energizes me towards that genre.
I love that. All right. Last question.
Okay.
It's a two-parter.
Okay.
So many leaders secretly battle imposter syndrome, no matter how much success they achieve.
Sure.
So, two parts. When is it likely to show up for you? What's the circumstance? And when it does, how do you handle it?
And I was going to answer that in two parts as well. I'm going to try to rein in on one answer. I was going to say the first thing is when you have that natural anxiety or fear, when you go into an area that you're not conditioned to. In Japanese, they call it mushin, which is thought without thought. And in America, that translates into muscle memory. So when you go into a presentation with a manager, executives, or you're going off of muscle memory because you've met, you look them in the eye, you shake their hand, you say, hey, I'll sit down with you, show you how I can help you guys save money and be more efficient. And we've placed for this company and we've worked with another competitor of yours. You're going on autopilot, but you still want to be involved in the moment. And I think the anxiety of going into another area, and what I do is I've always used fear as a catalyst, an impetus to propel me, because the fear of failure is much higher to me than everybody. I think not everybody, but success is something that if you're groomed for it and have the pedigree for it, you can handle. But not everybody's failure is something that no one really wants. And there's an old line, it's hard to stay a heavyweight champion when you get used to sleeping in silk pajamas. And that's true, because you have to work on muscles that you haven't used. And you can still rely on the old muscles that you still used in a previous pursuit that work for the other outlet. But you've got to be able to say, I'm going to translate this into, it's like languages. I'm going to use this because Italian is a Romance language and Spanish is a Romance language. I'll use the things that carry over, but I'm going to learn the new language or the new genre or the new fit. And I'm going to use that to not only have me a little fearful, but it's also going to be exciting because it's going to be the unknown. And we were talking about it earlier, analysis paralysis or the fight or flight syndrome. You can use that adrenaline to do one of two things. You can use it to get out of the way of the car that's coming at you, or you can just stand there and get run over. And I'd rather be living the next day and fighting the fight again. I think if you continue to fight the fight, that helps your chance for success.
Yeah, I would agree. I think also what you're talking about, asking the questions.
Sure.
So you don't have to sit in your own little ivory tower and try to figure it out as if nobody has ever figured this out before.
Sure.
On the one hand. On the other hand, you gather as much information as you can, and then you have to take some action, right? And then the answers are going to get clearer the more you are in motion. And I think that is, at least when I talk about analysis paralysis, like for me, that comes up a lot. It's like I can be impulsive. Just ask my husband.
Hey.
On the other hand, I can also get to the point where I am just like wanting more information and more information. And there's a point at which you're going to have to make a decision with either incomplete information or the information you have. Because the other thing is too, is that oftentimes, and especially like what you're doing now, you can't really know all the answers until you actually start doing it.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of getting ready to get ready.
Yes. Research since the end of June. And the more I found out, like you said, it's a weight that gets heavier and heavier on top of you. And eventually, the insurance guy is constantly messing things up and he's bragging about how you got a ball bat to go through your window. You can get weighed under with all that stuff. And eventually, you just got to go through the rubble and make your own path. And I think that's where trial and error comes up.
That's right.
You're going to make mistakes, no matter how much you research it, no matter how much you think you're going to perfect it going in. But if you'd asked me 10 years into my staffing career, what I learned versus what I knew at the beginning, it was a totally different outlook.
That's right.
Toby Keith had a great song. I wish I knew now what I didn't know then. And you got to apply that you got to get out there, and you can't replicate experience.
That's right. Exactly. And just apropos kind of unconventional wisdom, I think the other piece is that you also can't know what is going to work specifically for you until you go out there and try it, right? So everybody can give you the advice of how to do it, or my favorite, how you should do it. And unless we're talking about something where there's compliance or it's legal, there is a how you should do it, and you
Right.
definitely should do it that way.
Sure.
But listen, if you should do it one way, but you can't execute on it, then you're not going to get anywhere. So maybe you should actually try to do it a different way, because action beats just sitting there trying to figure it out every time.
Exactly. And I think everything is a learning tool. And even if you don't get it right, was it Thomas Edison or someone said, every time I didn't figure out a way to do it, I got one step closer to how to do it?
That's right. Exactly.
So I think you have to take and go, it's not a failed experiment. It's not a failed effort unless you stop trying.
That's right. Yeah. Oh my God. That's actually a perfect statement to end our conversation. And I think that's such good advice. And I hope that you remember it as you are going on your journey. And I know the listener is going to take that away. And I certainly am going to remember that as I move my ventures forward.
Sure.
Mike, it was such a pleasure to speak to you today.
Thank you.
And we wish you just all the luck on your journey. And you have a lot of wisdom to share. So I believe you will be successful.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, Kim.
You bet.
Have fun at your party.
Oh, thank you. Yep, will do. So you have been listening to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom. I'm your host, Kim Miller-Hershon. We've been talking to Mike Barefoot. And please, he's got so many good things to say. Share it, download it, listen, engage with it. We really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next episode. Go out there and be a better human.
Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, make fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet.